getting ready to burn off 4 or 5 acres tomorrow. And just like a lot of things, preparation is everything. I've raked a 6-foot line around the entire burn area, and then I'm coming through right now just as a precautionary measure with a leaf blower, a backpack leaf blower, to make sure there is absolutely nothing but bare mineral soil on my burn break. You can see it behind me. So that's the main thing, just making sure you've got a burn break. If you don't have a burn break, you're toast. If you don't have a good burn break, then you can expect to have problems. So that's what I've been doing, is just prepping for the burn tomorrow. And once you've prepped well, once you've got good burn lines, then you can light the match and relax. So that's what I'm doing now. Here's an example of a new burn line that I put in, and we got a lot of rocks, but you can see the combination of the rock rake as well as the leaf blower has taken all of this down to bare soil. It used to be like this, covered with several inches of very dry leaves. Now it looks like this, nothing but bare dirt. Every once in a while you'll see a leaf or a twig, but overwhelmingly completely bare dirt. And it's really important that you get it to bare dirt, because fire will find a way. If you burn under the wrong conditions or you leave some kind of susceptibility, fire will find a way, and then you're hosed. So that's what I've been working on, is getting these breaks put in. Nate and I are out here getting ready to drop the match this morning, and we're doing a last check on our burn break for snags, and we found a big one right here. So a snag is a dead tree that's likely to start on fire, and you have to think about these, because if it starts up and the stump burns out, then it can fall across our burn break, and then we got some trouble. So you just come around all these snags, you can either cut them down or you can rake out around the base, and that's what I'm going to do on this one here, is just clean out the fuel from around the base so it will not start. Nate and I just dropped the match on our prescribed burn. There was 3 things that we had to take into consideration that decided where we started the fire and when we started the fire. So one is the wind speed. This morning we've got 5 to 10 miles per hour, which is about what you want for a prescribed fire. The other thing is the wind direction. I like to do a backing fire, which means we're burning against the direction of the wind, so it doesn't burn quite so hot, so fast. The other reason the wind direction matters is because of your neighbors. We have neighbors to the south of us, so I wanted a south wind to make sure that we're not sending all of our smoke straight into the neighbor's property. As a result of that, though, we're burning uphill. At least for a part of the burn, it's going to be uphill, which generally you don't want, because fire burns faster and more aggressively uphill. Generally, you want to avoid that so you get a better burn and it doesn't get out of control as easily. But we had to make a choice here, because we don't want the fire smoke going towards the neighbor's house. So we picked a south wind. We're starting on the downhill side, so we get a backfire even though we're burning uphill. We're about 30 minutes into the burn, and I want to show you a few things here. We've been working getting our line started, and in a few places it's fizzled out. That's because it's like 8 o'clock in the morning. There was a lot of dew on the ground, really high humidity, and it's just really hard to keep the fire going under these circumstances. I'm okay with this though. I'd prefer to have a fire that starts really slowly than one that just gets going too big, too fast. So here in an hour or so, the humidity will have dropped, the day winds will have picked up just a little bit, and that should be enough to get all this going. Nate's lighting up one of the food plots for us. All right, go ahead, buddy. It's still early morning, so I started up some warm season grasses that are along this burn break. This is one of the more questionable burn breaks that I've got. It's not bad, but you can see I had to weed eat and rake to get every bit of grass out of here, and it's impossible to get all of it. So I wanted to make sure and get this grass started along the edge while it's still kind of mild and poor burning conditions, so I can be standing and watching the fire as it approaches this break, and I'm here to address it if there's any trouble. Watching the fire burn off these warm season grasses out of the food plots is one of my favorite things. And it looks like a big scary fire, but I know I've got good burn breaks. I've taken care of all the snags, so I can just relax and enjoy it. This is the fire working through one of my old food plots. You can see what happens here with the backing fire. That means we're working the fire into the wind. And that way the fire does not get too hot too fast. You can see the burn brake doing its job. It got a little bit windy, but the fire burns right up to the edge of the burn brake, runs out of fuel, and the fire's over. The fire's working its way through one of our food plots. Going really, really well. Alright, the burn is basically done, and this is my favorite part. Driving around, looking at how the fire did its job, and even more importantly, the burn brake did its job too. The fire burned right up to the edge of the brake, ran out of fuel, fire stopped just like it's supposed to. It's another good look at our burn brake that we're driving on and the fire. I made one significant mistake during this burn. You can see the burn line is right here, the burn brake, and I overlooked this snag. And unfortunately, as happens commonly, the snag is on fire. Right now it's just smoking, but there's still a pretty decent chance that that snag will burn and burn and burn, and eventually enough of it will have burned that it will break and fall. And just based on how it's positioned here, there is a chance that when that snag falls, it could flip backwards and fall onto my burn brake and then over here into the timber that doesn't have a burn brake around it. So that's the trouble with these snags, and why unfortunately now I can't exactly take it easy. I have to keep coming out here checking this snag to make sure that it hasn't fallen, and when it does fall, because it will fall, and when it does fall, I've got to make sure that if it falls on the wrong side, I'm there to fix it. Here's one of the food plots we burned off as a part of this burn unit, and you can see it burned extremely well. There's still patches of green grass, probably orchard grass, that will come right back, but the burn really helps to set back the weeds. It also helps to burn up all the thatch, and probably even burns up some of the seeds left over from last year, which is all good. In a few weeks, what I'll do is wait for everything to green back up a little bit. Then I can come through and spray it, terminate whatever comes back, whether that's weeds or volunteer from last year, and then I can plant it in my spring food plots. Here's something I think is interesting. This entire area burned really well, but you can see a lot of this brush and leftovers from the TSI I did in here last year. None of that burned up. I found that surprising. I really thought that, all this brush, all these treetops are a year old. I thought that they would burn up completely, and they did not burn up at all. So that's fine. It was just a little bit unexpected. I was hoping that this would clean up really well, but you can really see that there's still a lot of treetops and stumps, trunks here that were not affected by this prescribed fire whatsoever. So that's kind of a disappointment. Probably what that means is I just need to chop it up a little bit, get it down smaller, and we'll try it again next year. I think also part of the problem was I burned through this unit last year in this particular area. I'd already burned through it, so there was a lot less fuel on the ground. That was probably part of the problem. One of my favorite things is after the burn is over, walking around looking at interesting things that you couldn't see before. This is something we always find when we burn our property. This is an old pine stump that is decades and decades old, but the tree was cut down or died at just the right time, probably when the sap was down, and this stump will burn for hours. It's really interesting. Every time we burn through our property, we see this. This area behind me is a spot that I was really excited to come back and look at after the burn was over. This was a raging fire coming through this valley. You can see, just based on how it looks now, that it burned very, very hot. A very good burn. And, when you're standing outside watching this fire, It is a big fire. It's a big, scary fire, but I knew that this was inside of the burn break, so there was absolutely nothing to be worried about. This big log that you see crossing the valley there, it was completely on fire at one point, but like I said, no reason to be concerned because I knew I had a good burn break. I knew that the fire would keep on going until it ran out of fuel. That's why on these fires, preparation makes all the difference. If your burn lines are really, really good, you can light the match. You got to be attentive, but you can relax. Here's a really good view of the burn unit right here on the edge next to my burn break. You can see this burn break is 99% bare mineral soil. You see a leaf and a twig in there every once in a while, but this is why you can have confidence going into the burn when you've got a really good burn line. You can see the fire burned hot. It burned really well right up until here when it ran out of fuel.